Hello, I'm going to be going through this new card called Elementaria Sanctitude, which was just revealed the other day. It's basically a nationless card that can be played in any deck. I think it was designed more so for standard format, but it's ended up having a lot of applications in premium. Because what it does is, if you have a grade 3 or less Vanguard, you can basically PG with it. So if you play Bermuda Triangle and you play grade 4s like Aneska, that's an example in which this card can kind of go wrong. So just be wary of that. But of course, I think the intention is that Persona Ride decks had a bit of a disadvantage, and I think they want to try and balance it out and have some reason to play those decks. And so Elementaria Sanctuary came in, but also it rewards you for going against grade 4 decks as well. So if you're against triple drive, then you can basically evade this card cost completely and just drop one card to guard. And because of that, it happens to be good against Stride Mechanic, because Stride Mechanics also have triple drives, just like the grade 4s in D series do. So it's very effective for that. It's a sentinel, so you can only play 4 copies of the sentinels, including this card, but you can only play 1 copy of this card. So you can play 1 of this and 3, for example, draw perfect cards or something else. So it's very useful, and because it's not a normal unit, although your right consistency suffers, this card can basically evade guard restricts because you're not actually placing it on guarding. It's not actually guarding, but you're just activating an effect that basically stops your opponent from hitting you. So it gets around so many things that you couldn't really deal with as easy before. So to start with, we have the Mega Colony iconic grade 3 Death Warden Antline. So this card, it's more for modernized grade 3 or modernized guard restrict, because instead of it being grade 1 or greater that it guard restricts against, it guard restricts against sentinels, which is obviously very helpful because if you can do that, you get around draw PGs and protect gifts as well, which came out during the V series. So this one's been very good, especially with cards like Zoa as well, and of course the Gridora Strike can also be good with this. So very handy card, and Gridora obviously stops G Guardians because Zoa can't stop G Guardians, because there are some G Guards that can make massive numbers now, or Perfect Guard or the like. So very good for that, but now the Blitz order is another reason for Antline to be afraid. And then furthermore, we have Talented Rhinos. So this is one of the cards that got introduced that kind of punishes draw perfect guards as well, because in the V format, just like with Ichikishima, if your opponent plays draw perfect guards, then suddenly they can't guard against these cards. Obviously, if they play grade 1 perfect guards, then they can guard better. So that's always nice. But the thing is that because it's Generation Break 1, there's even more of a chance that your opponent's going to try and stride. So it's very likely that you can use your Blitz order against this to get a 1 card drop against this card, which is quite efficient as well. And then we've got Hamio, which is another Sentinel Restrict, played Angel Feathers. Obviously, it doesn't need GB1 because it's a V-Series card. But otherwise, it's effective against Hamio, especially when it stacks a whole bunch of crits as well. So that's another card Knight has to worry about because you're not placing the Sentinel on Guardian Circle. And same with Amaruda, who can basically be used very nicely with Yggdrasil and Norn to get the restands. Of course, that's all you're going to play because Regalia is the best version of Genesis by a long shot. And due to that, you can do things like Soul Blast 15, trigger the Sentinel Restrict, and then you attack with the Vanguard again with 2 drives. And then you can have a restanding rear guard that has Norn boosting, and then you go for another attack. It has to boost Regalia, by the way, so most likely they're playing CO Yggdrasil or some other grade 3 or less Regalia. So this is very good with Sentinel Restrict, but because of the Blitz not being placed on Guardian Circle, Amaruda can't stop that Blitz order, so now that's 1 less card in the deck that Amaruda can stop. And then we have Ravenhead Ezel, which is a very strong card when you combine it with Gurgway Helios. It can do a near perfect Guardian Restrict, except that you can still use G-Guards. So this card, it's not quite as popular now because we've had the Ravenhead Ezel V-Series card introduced, which obviously cannibalizes the slots for playing Ravenhead Ezel. Although that being said, Percival is also a very popular card as well that sees play. So you've got the competition for space, but then you can't even get away with attacking this either because Wonder Ezel has now been banned, and because Wonder Ezel is banned, it means you can't just call this when you want to. So this card has lost some popularity in deck building because of that. So you're less likely to come into a situation where your opponent uses this with Helios because they're less likely to be playing a build that allows for that. But of course, the Blitz order gets around it because it's not being placed on Guardian Circle. And then next we have Operator Girl Linker. So this is a D-Please card. Very strong because it can basically smash any Guardian and also nullify the effects. So anything that does a sort of perfect guard ability, it doesn't have to be a Sentinel card, just anything that stops your Vanguard from being hit. it can just get rid of that entirely. So that includes even pseudo perfect guards. And to make it even worse, if your opponent has a burst Vanguard, which is what they need to use this, they can get massive power in Deep Police, because that's how Deep Police works, and they can also gain a lot of crits. So it's very, very hard to actually guard in the first place, but the fact they can even just say no and just smash all your perfect guards, as well as smash your guardians that have, let's just say you happen to somehow make a big enough guardian circle, they can still smash your guardians if they don't see triggers. So they've got multiple ways to reduce the power or increase the power of their Vanguard if they don't have to deal with PGs. So it's a very hard card to guard against if they pull it off. But to kind of add to that, we've seen more cards being introduced lately which counter Linker, because we've now got Genesis G-Guard, which can -2 crit. We've got the Ground Boot G-Guard, which can also minus crits for every 10 drop, I believe it was. Dark Regulars also has something similar. So we've got some counters that have recently come out that help against Dimension Police. But now this Blitz Order is just another card that can also deal with it, because it's not being placed on Guardian Circles, so it's not getting smashed. It can't get stopped. So this thing fears the Blitz Order. And then you've got Mizukaze. So Mizukaze, it's very strong if you combine it with Hand Shredding. And of course, if you've got a situation where your opponent can't guard with stuff, then it's kind of harder to deal with a card like this. But now that you've got the Blitz Order, you can get away with just dropping one card if your opponent's on triple drive, of course, which is quite common. You can basically do that, and you can have your G-Guard to deal with another attack. Nubatam doesn't really do that many attacks, so it kind of helps in this situation if you get guard restricted to have that extra sentinel in your deck that does get around guard restricts. So that's always handy. We've got also Evil God Bishop Gastille. So this thing is very effective because it doesn't just stop guardians, it stops all auto abilities in general. So it also touches the Vanguard. So if they had Magatsu, for example, Magatsu can perfect guards just by using his effect, and it's not really putting anything in Guardian Circle, so this card gets around that too. And also the Blitz Order kind of messes though with Gastille, because the Blitz Order is not an auto ability either, so they can't stop it with this card's skill. So very good against Gastille, which is one of the harder decks to guard against if they ever pull this off against you. And then there's Drag Principal Morfessa, so one of many Battledores I'm going to go through. So Battledore skills are very scary because they can basically make you drop multiple cards, especially if you perfect guard, because if you perfect guard, you have to discard one from hand, and then you have to also place another card on your guarding circle, so you're losing 3 cards every time you guard with a perfect guard, which is sort of a downside with having to deal with these cards. Battledore skills are basically, it's sort of like a namesake for a card that came out at the beginning of V-Series. It was the first of its kind, where it forced your opponent to drop 2 cards onto Guardian Circle every time they guard. But then we've had crazy ones come out that actually make your opponent drop 3 cards as well. So it gets much, much worse for people to have to deal with. So Morfessa is one of them. It gives 15k in crit as well on Ritual 10. So that just makes it even more pressuring. And it's not that easy to get out of it, especially when they get stand triggers to get multiple attacks, and if they have Dagda to Spirit Core and do even more attacks with it. So Morfessa is one of the cards that technically the Blitz Order gets around, because you basically discard 1 to PG, but you can evade that discard because Morfessa is a triple drive, and because the Blitz Order you're not placing on Guardian Circle, so you never have to fulfill the requirements of Morfessa, which means instead of dropping 3 cards, you're now dropping 1 card, which saves you 2 cards in hand, which means you might have a better shot at actually guarding the rest of the turn. And then we've got Bartholomew. Bartholomew is a very strong guard restrict. It says your opponent has to call 3 or more at the same time. So that's really annoying if you have to use a perfect guard, because you'll be dropping 4 cards in this case. But now you're dropping just 1. So that's very good against Bartholomew. It's a very scary card, especially with Skull Dragon, which can gain a lot of power. Very hard to guard, so you tend to lean more on the perfect guards because of that. And then we've got another one which came out recently, Leontina. Just like Bartholomew, came out in P-Clan Collection 2022. That's what we call it now, not Premium Collection anymore. So this card's also scary because once it attacks, you can basically set up having the battle skill active, and it'll be very nice to use that new perfect guard against Leontina, or not guard, but you get what I mean. And so that's very good against it. Another thing it's good against is Crystallosa Dragon, which is very scary with Dual Knights, because Dual Knights has Salome, which can multi-attack. You've got Ashley, who can multi-attack. And obviously, when you combine Battlestar with multi-attacks, it gets a bit out of hand. So it's very useful to have a card that basically transforms 3-card discard into 1. So Crystallosa is very good for this reason. And same goes for Chain Rancor Dragon. It's not quite as crazy because it's not like Dual Knights where to do more attacks, you have to just sit on the stride. You can go down into raging form, and if you go into raging form, then obviously you don't have the effect anymore of this card. But then there's also just the fact that a normal Shadow Paladin turn isn't as aggressive as a Dual Knight deck, because Dual Knights have more attacks anyway in general before striding out with something like raging form. So Chainranker is still a threat anyway, despite that. But then I think the deck that really got hurt by this card, something I personally play, is still Water Festival Deity Ichikishima. So this card has kind of had to shake off so much lately, because we've had the grade 3 heals, and because of that, Silent Tom V series hasn't really been as popular. Obviously Protect Gifts were always good against this anyway, but now you've got to worry about heal triggers again, just like back in G series when heal triggers became threatening because of the G-Guard mechanic. We shut down the G-Guard mechanic with Ichikishima finally, and now they just made heals that are even scarier than the G-Guards themselves. But you can still get around that, of course, and Popo is an easy way of doing that, of course, as well. So we've got that option too. But the thing is, Popo cannot deal with the Blitz order. Just like Popo can't deal with good intercepts and the like, or Magatsu going off, for example. There is now another threat, which is the one-off Sentinel that any deck in the game can play, as long as they're on grade 3 or less, which I'm sure almost everyone's going to play this card. And because of that, obviously, if you try to set up your Popo play, then they're going to just perfect guard it anyway if they have that one-off. It's almost like an over trigger because it's a one-off that stops your turn. And because it stops your turn, and by the way, because Oracle Think Tank is not really like, it doesn't usually do more pressure in terms of hand decreasing compared to other decks, because it's just asking, can you guard or can you not guard? Okay, take it or don't take it. It's just simple attacks really. And it's not really saying, oh, you must guard with 20 cards or some nonsense like that just so you can survive the turn. It's very simple. It's just very simple attacks, except just saying you can't guard with this or that. And of course, because Ichikishima is easy to counter on her own, well, you don't really think about Ichikishima hitting as often. So you're usually consolidating everything onto your rear guard. If your opponent heals down to 3, you definitely need to rely on that one rear guard to connect. And of course, if you don't connect, you'll deck out eventually, right? So it's kind of scary for Oracle Think Tank players. So that's pretty much it. Let me know down below if there's any cards that you think I missed, or maybe what cards you play that you're now worried won't be as effective because of the new Blitz. Like, is there anything that's now kind of making you think, oh, now everything's going to feel a bit luck-based and maybe a bit like getting hit by an over-trigger because it will shut down your turn? Let me know anyway. And until then, I will see you later. Goodbye.